yellow thing? Oh, it's the pie. I'm like, what is that yellow thing over my shoulder? Oh, it's
Like,
the
what's
pie
happening?
stuffy. Mandy, I have 7 pie stuffies now.
7?
Yeah, like all different sizes and all different types of pie. Is that a normal amount of pie stuffies for someone to have?
No, absolutely not. Just kidding. You're talking
Hmm.
to me. Me, who has multiple cat ear headphones for no reason. So no.
Seriously.
This episode is sponsored by Druid City Games.
It's time for the Salt and Sass podcast when we share our love for the wonderful world of board games with you, whether you are a gaming veteran or just starting your tabletop journey. Welcome to episode 16. I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Mandi.
And here we are. Oh, Mandy, so many games being played, so many games coming out, so
Yes.
much busyness. Big week.
It's
Big,
been
big couple of weeks.
wild. I mean, yeah, just games, life in general, all the things, so many things. And I'm very excited today because for once, I have fewer video games and things to talk about than Suzanne.
Whatever. That's not even.
Uh-huh.
Gosh, you're so judgy. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so folks, hey, thanks to everybody who listened and chimed in to episode 15. A number of you posted your shelf of opportunity games in our Board Game Geek Guild, and that was really fun to read through. Justin wins the award. They listed like 50 games. Bless their heart. Go, Justin. I appreciate your
Wow.
transparency. Mad respect for
Amazing.
that. And I, quite frankly, Mandy, I saw some really good games there that people need to get to the table. Somebody had Cloud Spire. Somebody
Nice.
had Smartphone Inc.
It's a good
I'm
one.
like, get smartphone on your table. Come on, you got to do it. And it was very inspiring, Mandy. I was so inspired by our game pie of episode 15, our Shelf of
Yeah.
Opportunity game pie. I actually, in just the ensuing 2 weeks, I got 2 games played that were on my Shelf of Opportunity list.
Oh.
So I've now at least once played Beer and Bread
Okay.
and Nightfall. And so I have to play them, a little bit more. But I am very proud of myself for knocking some unplayed games off that list. So there you go.
That's so good. I wish I
Mandy, how
could
are you
say.
doing on your list, huh?
To be fair, we only listed like 4 and I had many others, like some of the
Yeah.
ones
True.
behind here, and I did get some of those played. So, not terribly. Maybe not some of the ones I listed, but it's a start. I did play a few.
Okay. We'll give you half points for that then, okay?
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. Well, Mandy, what about video games? Video
Yeah.
games you've been playing.
I'm in this weird space with video games right now where I just want a really strong RPG game. Something with a really good story, has a little bit of combat, building a character. I don't know. I feel like right now, and we have these moments in board games where it's just like, yeah, you've got some really good games, but nothing's like just grabbing you saying, this is amazing. So I'm kind of feeling like that right now with like the lack of RPGs I want to play. So I did restart Mass Effect, and that's thanks to David
Oh,
because I
isn't
know
that scary? Like, so that's a sci-fi, but it's horror, like, right? It's scary.
I think so. I don't think so, but I would say maybe that's more like Dead Space. Dead Space is scary, but
Okay.
Mass Effect, it is definitely in that sci-fi kind of realm, and I know David really likes it, and he's the one who's convinced me to start it because he's playing it again on like legendary hard mode. So I'm like, yeah, you can do that. I am not doing that. So I kind of restarted that because story is pretty good, and that's on the Game Pass because they have the Legendary Edition, which has all of them: Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. And then Disney Dreamlight Valley. I kind of dropped it for a bit. It kind of ticked me off a little bit because I went to play it. It didn't save something, and I had done all this renovations and all of these things, and yeah, I was mad. So I was like, I'm not playing this for a while. So I picked it back up again, and it seems to have restored my save. So I'm okay with it now. So back on Disney Dreamlight Valley, which is great if you all like that kind of Animal Crossing type game. That's also on Game Pass, but I think you can get it on Steam and PlayStation and other platforms. So that's what we're working with now, but Ghostwire Tokyo is coming, and I'm hoping that'll be the kind of RPG-esque type game I'm looking for. Oh, and lastly, Breath of the Wild. Pick that up again, too. I'm on a whole restarted thing.
Ooh.
Still don't love it.
Mm.
I really am trying, but the breaking of the weapons and the lack of a strong storyline for me, it's just not grabbing me, and I know there are people that
Oh,
love it. I
wow,
get
Mandy, I
it.
think you're gonna start some you're gonna take some heat for that one. Wow.
I get it. I
Bold
get why
move,
people like
sister.
it, but I need a game that has a strong story, and the breaking weapons is really actually stressing me out. I'm like, allow me to get weapons and hoard them and not use them and use the one that I like. I see nothing wrong with this. Allow me to do this. This game does not allow that. And I find myself using weapons that I can't stand, but something broke, so I gotta pull it out and use it. I don't find that enjoyable. So Breath of the Wild, while I know you are cherished by many, still not a fan.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think, yeah, my
Rant
experiences
over.
with Breath of the Wild are have their own reputation.
Mm,
So,
mm-hmm.
it not every game can be for every person.
That's it. Exactly.
And before we move on to some crowdfunding chat, I just wanted to mention a game I've been playing the demo on my Nintendo Switch for called Wild Frost.
Ooh, this is on my wish
And Mandy,
list.
yeah, so I was really glad they did a free demo because I was looking and go, oh my gosh, this game looks amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure. But sometimes you buy games and they don't work out. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a demo. Yes. And yeah, the demo basically convinced me I'm gonna buy it day one. So it releases technically on April 12th on Steam for PC and on the Nintendo Switch.
Nice.
And folks, I'm bringing it to us because if you're like me, I think you might enjoy this one. So basically, if you like Slay the Spire or a game called Monster Train,
Mhm.
Mandy, two of our favorites, right?
Yes.
Then I think it's worth taking a look at Wild Frost. This is a deck building game, similar combat game where you're, combating things, but it also adds a little bit of lane management
Yeah.
because you have two lanes where you're facing off and you get cards that represent characters that you put out into the lanes to fight, and then you have other cards that just add spells or like our swords that do direct damage and that kind of thing. And you can do different builds, like there's poison effects, there's frost effects, and this is just in the demo, and I can
Mm.
already see that they've got two other slots for archetypes that we'll get to explore eventually. And the way that the card management works is that you can refresh your hand anytime you want, but if you do it too early, then you take a turn to do that. If you wait until your
Okay.
hand's really low, then you can refresh your hand for free. So
Right.
there's no mana spending. It's just turn based. You go back and forth with
Hmm.
the enemies, and it's adorable, Mandy. You're gonna love the aesthetics. So where
Oh.
Slay the Spire and Monster Train have these really gritty looks and they're really tough and monsters, Wild Frost is like penguins and cute little cartoons and snow people. And yeah, the art is adorable and really charming, but the gameplay is meaty.
Right.
And it's interesting because I'm just playing the demo, but I get to the end and I'm like, okay, the first boss, like, okay, cool, that was really easy. And then in the last boss, like the difficulty ramps. So that's a good thing. But there are charms you can add to your cards to alter your cards. You can slim your deck. Like all the basics that you want to see are in there as well, with just enough twists and turns to make it something a little different. So anyway, that's Wild Frost. It's coming on Steam and Switch. I tried the demo on
Mhm.
Nintendo Switch, and it's an insta buy for me, Mandy. So
No, this is
Mandy, if I
great.
got it, if you would you want it on the Nintendo Switch or would you want it on the PC?
I mean, yes, I do enjoy playing on my PC in bed, but I think the Switch, because it's attached to the TV and everything, that's like with all the other stuff, I think the Switch is easier for me. And then if I travel, at least I'll have it on there if I want to play it. Because yeah, this one has been one that's on my wish list that I had for a while, but I was like, oh, it just looks really cute, and I didn't really look into it. So I'm glad that you played it and are saying that it's so good. So
Well, maybe a certain podcast pal of yours will make sure you get a copy on the Switch because it's that good. I want you to play it.
oh, this is yeah, and I'm it's funny. I'm not cheap, but when it comes to games, video games specifically,
Folks,
I
narrator
refuse.
voice. She
I
was, in fact,
refuse.
cheap.
I refuse to buy a video game full price or even at 10 or 20% off because after like 3 or 4 months, they go down to like 50% anyways or more. So I appreciate the offer and I would gladly take it, but don't spend your money until that goes like 30+% off.
Whatever. You're frugal. We won't call you cheap. We'll call you frugal,
Sure, but I'm
okay?
totally cheap when it comes to video games.
You are. You are. I love you. Anyway. All right. Enough about video games. Let's talk about the stuff we're here to talk about. Let's talk about physical games. And we have y- crowdfunding, man. There's some good stuff out there. So, Mandy, why don't you swing first?
Yeah, so I try to stay off of it, but now that we have a little segment on our show, I'm forced, I put this in air quotes, forced
Mm-hmm.
to go on
Mm-hmm.
and check out what the offerings are in crowdfunding. So, one that stood out to me, and I know I thought of Suzanne because I know for a fact she probably has already looked at this one and just hasn't told me about it yet, is Taiwan Night Market. And this is by TBD Games. Is that Taiwan board design?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got that correct. And then the project's going to be funded by Saturday, May 6th. So that's when it ends. So you have some time to check it out. And in the game, you're a vendor and you're trying to make your fortune by bidding on locations for your stalls, so your food stalls, to attract customers with your delicious, delicious food. But of course, you have competitors and you need to be the best one in this market. So that's the kind of overarching theme of the game. I know this is what kinda made me go, "Ooh, I don't know," because I saw some bidding happening. I don't know how I feel about that. But, I'm hoping it's not some games do bidding really well, so I'm hoping that's what happens here. And I don't that's super vague, but do you know what I mean? Like, when you think bidding, there's, like, a general way that you bid on things, and then there's some games, like, I think Tramways did it in a really interesting way, and there are games that make it interesting where I'm like, "Okay, I don't mind this type of bidding," or I think, Arkwright is another one that does that. So, I'm here for that, and it does seem like it's done in an interesting way. And they have several phases in the game, which is your preparation phase, and this is where you're getting your locations out that you want to be auctioned. You've got your bidding phase that I was talking about, and this is where you're looking for the locations. You want to be like, hey, I want those good locations, so you're going to bid for those. Then you're open for business. Come buy all my foodstuffs. And then your cleanup phase, which is the norm in most games. So it's very straightforward. And if you go on Kickstarter, because that's where this one is, it outlines the rules and everything and some nice images there for you to check out. So I believe quickly here, one copy is 42 US, which is about 57 Canadian. And don't forget there's going to be shipping and whatnot on top of that. But yeah, I think Taiwan Night Market, I like the look of it. I like the theme of it. And I'm always happy to support really great publishers like TBD Games. So yeah, Taiwan Night Market. Definitely
I
another good
already
one. I
backed
knew it.
it. You
Son of a
did. You
biscuit, I
know
knew
me
it.
so well. I'm sorry.
Dang it.
Is it my turn?
It's you. I'm like, "Hey, I can't."
Oh, I were you. I was. I know you have something else you want to mention. That's
Okay,
fine.
well, do you want I mean, I don't mind. Okay, sure. I'll throw it out now. Let me just do the thing. So, I was only gonna talk about 1. That's why there was a bit of hesitation. Because now I can talk about 2. This is really just a special mention. Project L reprint plus new expansion. So Project L is a game that's been out for a while. Like, I think we even played it or talked about it when we were at Essen, like, 3, 4 years ago,
4 years
maybe?
ago. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
a
been a
while
long
ago.
time. And, I think I'd mentioned on this podcast, and there were a few people who were kind enough to let me know where I could get pieces or the expansion because the business was I don't know if they just weren't around or they weren't gonna be selling the game anymore, whatever the case may be, I just wasn't able to get it. But now Board Cubator is on Kickstarter with a new project for the reprint of Project L and some new expansions, and I think, April 13th, so that'll be the day after this airs, I believe. So, you've got if you're
Yep,
listening to this, you've got 1 day to go and
that's
check
right.
that out. But I am missing, I think, 1 of the expansions, and I think Suzanne was going through it and noticed that it will play 6 players now with this,
Yeah, they
new
have. They've added
expansion.
the Phoenix expansion that adds a sixth player. So I'll
Yeah,
probably back for that.
I need that. So, for those of you who are looking for Project L, because we've talked about it, or you're just looking for general, or you wanna check out these new expansions, it's on Kickstarter, and at the ending of this podcast, you'll have about 1 day. Check it out before it ends.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll start with a quick special mention
Okay.
because why not? Hey, I mean, if
Sure.
Mandy gets one, I get one, right? So, Three Little Pigs in the Wild West is a print and play roll and write game designed by Benny Sperling and his kiddos, which is amazing. And as a print and play, I love print and play roll and writes because they're quite affordable. $4 gets you a copy of the game, and it ends April 23rd. And this roll and write has a rondelle and dice as workers, and it's adorable. And for those of you who haven't been keeping track, Benny is a designer that we've covered projects on before.
Yeah.
He's just very prolific with the roll and write genre and doing these print and play games. There's just a huge variety of them now that he's published. So worth taking a look if you're into the print and play roll and writes. Three Little Pigs in the Wild West. That's my special mention. But now we're going to talk about Tall Tales. Tall Tales is a game. It's a trick taking game, Mandy,
Oh, hello.
and it's being published by New Mill Industries. And I have had a chance to play a prototype of this game, so I can go into a little more detail on it. So basically, it's on Kickstarter now, and it ends, I think, April 24th. And it has, four suits. They're all related to Tall Tales. So, like, one of the suits is an axe for the Paul Bunyan suit kind of thing. It's adorable.
Love it.
I believe the illustrations are all done by the game designer, a person named Rand as well, which is
Oh,
really,
cool.
I think they're adorable, right?
Yeah.
And basically, what Tall Tales is, it adheres to a lot of trick taking game standards in terms of following suit and how tricks are won and things like that. And then part of the game, the nuances of the game completely turns that on its head and
Mm,
completely flips all the norms. And it's this really weird dichotomy of a traditional trick taking game and something very different than a trick
right.
taking game. And what I feel is a very positive way. So basically, you play in 4 rounds and you have two scoring opportunities. So halfway through the game, round one, two, score, three, four, score. At that first scoring, you're going to count up your points and get half of them. And at the end of the game, you're going to count up the points and get all of them. And then that's whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins it.
Right.
That's cool. That's interesting. But where your mind is really going to start to melt is how you get these cards. So they're dealt out in the first round, and then there's cards in the center as kind of a card market where you're going to be exchanging cards based on how you win the tricks. It's bananas. And then all the cards that you gain in the first round, that becomes like your discard essentially, that becomes your hand for the second round of play. So you actually
Oh,
build your hand of cards and you see what everybody else is building too. And then you go into the second round and then you score.
right.
And then you do it all again. You get fresh cards in the round three, and then you do it all again for round four. And this back and forth and the building of your hands and how the higher and higher value cards get added into the game through that card market as
Mhm.
you progress. All of that comes together in something that's fairly mind blowing from a trick taking point of view. And personally, I find it absolutely intriguing. So, if you like trick taking games, and there's a lot of us out there, right?
Yeah.
But you enjoy trick taking games that do something different, or you are interested in a trick taking game that really goes to another level. Oh, Tall Tales, I definitely think is worth taking a look at. Now, I will say, I don't know that Tall Tales should be your first trick taking game because
Fair.
it is intense enough
Yeah.
that I think it would kind of melt your brain out of your ears. Like start with Hearts or
Oh,
start with
no.
The Crew or something.
Sure.
But if you're an experienced trick taking player and you want something that does it different, yeah, Tall Tales on Kickstarter, I personally, highly recommend.
Oh, no. I'm gonna have to go look at
Yeah,
that.
it's real good, Mandy.
Yes.
Anyway,
Is there a
alright.
Paul Bunyan song? I feel like there's a Paul Bunyan song or a song about Paul
Would
Bunyan?
you like to make a Paul Bunyan song, Mandy?
No. Someone okay, I
With Babe
swear
and the
I
Bl what,
feel there
Babe the
is.
Blue Ox?
I feel like there is one. Anyway, it was maybe a dream or something that I thought there was one, and there
A
isn't.
fever dream.
Yeah, there we go. Moving on.
Alright, let's move on to games we've been playing. We have a guest expert appearing in this episode too, and we will wrap up with a game pie, right, Mandy?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we talked about Shelf of Opportunity, and I have played some of them, and some of them I'm going to talk about today. So this is very exciting. But before I do that, there was a game that was there for a while, and I really wanted to get it played. And I know Suzanne has talked about it on the podcast, and it's Plantopia.
Oh, yeah.
It's do you remember the publisher? This is I'm seeing the logo in my
Oh,
mind. Uh
it's
Origame?
or
Origame?
game, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, so cute. It's just it's literally like you're planting cards and trying to get specific types of cards to score at the end of the game. Like it's very straightforward and simple, and they've got some really cute art on here. And I think my game group spent 20 minutes just reading the puns and stuff on the card. And everyone was like,
Really?
"Oh my god, check this one out. This is so funny." It was a lot of that, and then we all determined that we would like these on shirts, some of these sayings. So, just throwing it out there, if this exists, I want it. And the game itself is actually quite snappy. Like it only plays in like I think 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and it's really straightforward on top of being super cute. So my game group really liked it, and I think Tracy, one of my friends I played with, was like, "So where can I get this game? Because I want it because it's just super cute and fun." So Plantopia, I just wanted to let you know, Suzanne, I played it and I
Good.
really
I'm glad
enjoyed
you
it.
liked it.
Now we're going to talk about a game that I had other types of feelings for, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. This happens on occasion. So Detective Rummy. Now,
Oh,
the
a
title of this
classic.
game, I know, and I was like, "Oh, the rummy part of it." My friends were really excited. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about it. So, this is designed by Ralph H. Anderson and Mike Fitzgerald, and it's published by WizKids. It's for 2 to 4 players, plays in about 45 to 60 minutes, and it retails for about 56.95 Canadian. So, it might be a little bit less US. So, Detective Rummy is, as the title stipulates, is supposed to be a rummy style card game, but it has like a storytelling element. So, you're playing different cases. So, we ended up playing case 1, and this is the kind of, I'm going to say review where I may come back to it. I might not for reasons. But I think there are 6 cases. I might be off on that, but there are several cases that you can play through and track, but it's a very straightforward kind of tracking system. But the players take roles of detectives. So we're detectives and we're trying to solve the case, and in this case, gain fame. And this is what we're trying to get a lot of in the story. You can play it. I'm sorry, I have feelings and I'm trying not to jump ahead. You can play it in a campaign mode or you can play it in a case mode. We started off playing it in the campaign mode because we thought we were going to continue. That is TBD, to be determined. But in the game, you have these cards that you're going to hold in hand, like you would if you were playing Rummy or something like that, and they have 2 sides to them. So they have 2 colors. They don't really mean anything, the colors, but they have symbols on them that do matter. And there are times in the game where you're going to have to visit a location, and this may require you to get rid of one of those cards. Or if you're trying to do a specific action, you're going to need to get rid of the same symbol of cards. And it's Rummy, right? So you want to try and empty your hand, and the game definitely makes it tricky in order to do so. So that's, in playing, if you have played Rummy, you'll see things that be like, okay, yeah, I see how that kind of falls in line with Rummy, but then they have a whole other kind of storytelling element, which is something different. And each location that you're trying to visit, you also want the opportunity to try and accuse somebody, so investigate someone to be like, I think you did the crime. So you have these little markers that you're going to place on that person, kind of accusing them of doing the crime, which is kind of an action. You have tokens that you're going to use that are going to help you kind of be able to do that because each player has a symbol that corresponds with their character and does a certain thing, but you need those symbols on your board in order for you to accuse or investigate these other types of detectives, including detectives that are in play but not players at the table. So, like we played with 3 of us, the other 2 detectives were still in the game, but we could accuse them or investigate them as long as we had their tokens on our board. Okay, so those are things that you could do, but you had to make sure that they were available for you to use and they weren't wounded or not ready or off the board. So the game ends when you get to the end of a certain amount of cards or deck depletes, and then you count up all the tokens that have been on the different boards. So you'll say, oh, Suzanne has 2 tokens, Mandi has 1, so Suzanne's going to get kind of more points, or basically take majority for that. So she's kind of won that investigation against that detective, and then you kind of do that. You do that for all of the different detectives. That's the general gist of it. I don't know how much more I should give away, but you get the idea of the game. So we were very excited to play this because it had that rummy style. We're like, yes. Then there was the narrative, which I have to tell you, I was so confused when we started playing this game. I was just I'm like, I don't understand. What are you saying to me? The narrative element confused me. I didn't
Oh,
understand.
normally you like that kind of thing in games,
I
so
love it. And it
yeah.
confused me. I was just like,
Mhm.
nothing was working hand in hand. Like the cards, for example. I'm a person that really appreciates when things make sense in a game. And it's sometimes I know it's unintentional when people are doing it. I mean, I think most people want that. But there are cards with 2 different colors on them. Instantly as a gamer, maybe not, I don't know, maybe it's an ADHD thing, I kind of go, oh, there's 2 colors. Do the 2 colors actually do something in the game? They don't. Purely aesthetic. For me, those are like added elements that you're just making it confusing. Like, why have them with 2 different colors? You already have 2 different symbols or wording on cards. Why are you now throwing in colors just for the sake of it? Maybe it comes up in a later case, but from reading other comments about the game, I saw none of that. So the color is a purely aesthetic thing. Personally, not a choice that I would make because I found it a little confusing. There was some verbiage in the game that, yeah, as gamers that we might know, but maybe someone who's playing this game who's not someone who plays these types of games. So when you're using words like ready, not ready, wounded, things like that, they were kind of being used a little interchangeably sometimes. And there are different types of tokens in the game. You have items, you have skills, and I feel like there should have been some kind of page that tells you what these things are. This is what we mean when we say ready. This is what we mean when we say wounded, because not everybody understands that. And that to take that for granted that people do know it, I think that might be kind of a downfall there for people who maybe are not familiar with it. We understood it, but I was like, yeah, that could be clearer. The rule book was not written to the way that I would have liked it personally. It was there was like missing information. So it took us, we actually had to go to see a lot of videos. We had to go online and look up comments for other people that had talked about the game, that had played it. And it's funny because a lot of people had said a lot of the same things that I'm telling you now. It just felt like there were things missing in the game and it wasn't kind of pulling it together. And then there were things missing in the rule book. And then there was already an errata. Like there was already something that came with the game. This is a new game that said, oh, use this instead of this. This has changed. In this case, use this. So does that signify maybe the game just wasn't ready yet? Because it does feel like it's missing things. And I feel then adding that narrative element on just confused me. It literally took me halfway through the game to be like, I kind of see where this is going. Like, I got the rummy part of it. Got that. But the narrative part to me just, I felt like I was doing things to do things. Like, why am I doing it? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm even making sense by saying that. So for me to accuse somebody, okay, it just didn't feel like I wasn't satisfied. I feel like that was it. I wasn't satisfied doing the things that I had to do and not fully understanding it because I didn't feel the tie with the story and then the rummy part of it. It's a bit of a stretch for me. So
have you played Mystery Rummy?
I have not, and I know that it's part of this, like a series, right, or something like
Right.
similar kind of thing.
Right, like a couple of the mystery rummies, and you said Detective Rummy, and I actually thought you were talking about Mystery Rummy, but now I see this is actually like a like a totally different
Right.
game. So now I'm really curious how Mystery Rummy and Detective Rummy compare.
Right.
Um,
And I
it,
haven't played it. So if you
it's been a
have
while
played
since
it,
I played Mystery Rummy. I played it years and years ago, so I have to. Interesting,
yeah,
interesting.
I feel
Well,
like it didn't need the
yeah,
story part of it, honestly, or if you're gonna
maybe
do the
not. Yeah,
story, you didn't
yeah.
need the rummy part. I don't know. I just felt like there was just something missing for me, and I feel
Mhm,
like it just wasn't like polished, like finished. So
mhm,
I don't think that was the intent, and I just feel like I was like left kind of unsatisfied and wanting more from it.
mhm.
And it wasn't really storytelling. It wasn't 100% rummy. So it was like I was kind of left in the middle, like, okay. So the reason why I say I'm going to come back to this is because my friends were like, but they're like, maybe if we give it another try, it'll be like better, or maybe it'll be clearer to us what the message is. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I'm a little disappointed, and I'm okay not to play this again, but I'm all about giving it a chance, and if my friends are willing to try it again, I will do so. So that's why I say this is a review with a dot 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 because I may come back to it. But as of right now, Detective Rummy for me, I feel needs to just kind of go back a little bit, tweak a little things, see how you can make the storytelling and the rummy kind of work together, or maybe just remove one of those elements and then come back with a more polished game. So Detective Rummy for me was not a win, but maybe people who are familiar with the what is it, murder
Mystery Rummy.
mystery rummy might find some connection that I'm missing.
Maybe. Listening
Okay.
to you talk about it, maybe. We'll
Okay.
see. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, it's rolling right day for me because hey, you know how it goes. So first up, well, Mandy, to some degree, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because if there's a roll right, sometimes I get asked like, when are you? like, I'll get to it when I get to it.
Yeah,
And people
that's fair.
kind of have I have expectations to live up to. Oh my goodness. So first up, Motor City.
Ooh,
Ooh.
good one.
This is designed by Ben Pinchbeck, Matt Riddle, and Adam Hill. The illustrations are by Ilya Avakov and Marlies Barons, and it's published by Motor City Gameworks, which is Ben and Matt's uh, publishing arm, and then 25th Century Games. So, yep, folks, it's a roll and write game that has dice drafting in it. And basically, what's going to happen is that you have a little board with the key actions in columns, and there's three different colors of dice: blue, white, and gray. And you seed the dice pool based on the player count, and you roll the dice and you allocate them to these different locations on the board based on their color and the face. And then everybody's going to draft dice. You get two, everybody gets to draft two dice, and then the last die that's remaining on the board is an action everybody gets to have. You use those dice to mark up your sheet, and of course, whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. This one plays in 8 rounds, so it's got a very predictable rhythm on that front. So generally, you're going to get three actions with this. So the board itself, where the dice are placed when they're allocated, most spaces have a symbol underneath them, and
Mhm.
that is like your bonus that you're going to get. Then you get the action related to the die face itself. It's going to be engineering, production, testing, or sales, and or speedometer. And then on your player sheets themselves, there's a little allocation spot with the four basic actions, and you can pick generally any of those actions to take as well. So on a turn, you're going to get up to three markings per turn. Now there are five main sections of the board. So the speedometer, you just make a little progress, but the speedometer actually ends up being pretty important because as you progress up the speedometer, you're going to get points. And the speedometer points are scored every single round. So if you have 3 points at the end of round two, you're going to get those points. And then, at the end of round three, you've earned two more. You're going to get the three plus the two more. So you're going to get, 5 points at the end of that round. So it just kind of adds up over
Hmm.
the rounds. And we've seen the speedometer really make a difference between who wins and loses.
Yeah, absolutely.
But beyond that, there are four sections on the sheet. Engineering, which has different columns of progression that you're just going to mark up. And then at the top, there are some extra end game scoring things that you can get. Production, which is like a little network of rows and lines and hubs that are interconnected that you can kind of mark your way through. And then when you get to these hubs, the hubs can give you special bonuses and points. There's testing, which is an area with three race tracks essentially that you're going to progress around. And then there's sales, which just earns you little bubbles of money. And every once in a while along the money track, you get little bonuses as well. If you've played any of the other roll and writes that this team have designed, Three Sisters or Fleet Dice, then it's going to have a familiar rhythm because these are games that you just start building and engine building, which is not a pun, not a pun. Engine building is a term in the industry, and it just happens to be a car thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I can't avoid it. So you get that engine building going, and ultimately, if you're playing it well, you're going to be getting a lot of combos. You're going to be bouncing back and forth through different areas of the sheet. For example, on the racetracks, sometimes you're going to go over an icon like a cargo or a tire. Well, all those do that just unlocks that item. Where that item really comes in is maybe on the production track. So, I got the C tire. Great, go find where the C tire is and mark that off, and maybe now you've unlocked something to score, right?
Right.
That kind of thing. So you're really bouncing all around. It actually takes up two sheets. They're half sheets though, so it's like
Mhm.
an 8.5 by 11 size piece of paper. And there's like research, kind of throwaway action you can do, and there's all sorts of like certificate, like there's all sorts of stuff you can score. There's just tons of different options and tons of different things that you can do. And then 8 rounds, whoever has the most points wins. Speedometer, very important. Maybe a touch too important. I'm not sure, but
Hmm.
if you play it,
Yeah,
don't lose track of the
I would
speedometer.
say so. Yeah.
Yeah. But overall, I like the rhythm, and really, Motor City feels like Ben and Matt and Adam, they have this structure, right? Where you're bouncing around and you're unlocking things and you're moving between different areas and you're making those choices. And I really do feel like Motor City takes what Fleet Dice did, which takes what Three Sisters did, and moves it up another notch. I really do like the flexibility you have in the dice drafting element with the bonuses, the action, and the sheet. There's an element where like an action will get blocked off on your sheet each round, but I I think it's one of those things, it really helps mitigate the dice where it's going to be, you don't feel like you're at the whims of the randomness of dice, which can be pretty important
Yeah.
in a roll and write game. And I think that Motor City handles that really, really well. I think there are multiple paths to victory. I mean, I mentioned the speedometer before, but I think I've played it where I've leaned into the tracks, I've played it where I leaned into production and all those different things. And I think all of them are viable in different ways, which I think again is a very, very positive thing. And overall, for me it's a hit, but I also really like Three Sisters and I also like Fleet Dice. I don't think this replaces it. I think it evolves it. I think the dice drafting is unique and a really compelling mechanism there. And I quite frankly, I think the theme is fun. Does it feel thematic? I don't know. Do roll and writes ever feel that thematic, but I do like that Motor City setting a lot. So Motor City is a big thumbs up for me. I really enjoy it in this family of Motor City GameWorks roll and write games.
This was really good. I really
Oh,
enjoyed
good.
this
I'm
one.
glad you liked it.
No, I liked it a lot. It's somewhere in this, if you're watching the video, somewhere over on that shelf. So I did play it not that long ago, and I really liked it. And it definitely, I feel, is a bit more complex. Not hard, but it's a bit more going on
Sure.
than Three Sisters. Do you know what I mean? A little bit more, in my opinion, than Fleet, but it kind of falls kind of just around
Yeah.
there.
Hmm.
But honestly, once I feel it's like I got the rules explained to me. I'm like, okay, I can't sit for a long time for rules. So I'm like, yeah, let's just start playing. Suzanne's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I know. So let's start playing. We'll go. And I picked it up fairly quickly. So I think that in itself lends it, that it wasn't hard in that effect. And the theme actually helped me, believe it or not. So with learning it. So I thought it was pretty good. So Motor City is good. If you haven't had a chance to play it, you should. Yeah, so before I jump into the final game I'm going to talk about, I wanted to say with Detective Rummy, I hate ending on a really bad note.
Oh,
And no, and I should mention that something that I did appreciate in the game is the placards for the detectives. You could choose the character. So it had two different forms of character on it, which I was here for. So you could be a man, you could be a woman, or, however they, and I liked the way that it was exactly the same powers or abilities. It's just you could choose what you wanted to, how you wanted to shape your detective, and I was here for that. So I do appreciate things like that. Giving people selection in how they want to be represented in a game, I think, is important. So uh, something nice to end on for Detective Remy. So now I know I'm sorry. It bothers me. Galileo Project is the next one that I played, and if you're watching the video, it's right there. Yeah. Super
I love
colorful.
that cover art. Yeah, it's
Right?
great.
It's so nice. It's so
Hmm.
bright and vibrant. Anyway, we'll talk about all that, but I was feeling it. So, Galileo Project is designed by Adrian Hessling, and art is by David Sipon, and it's published by Sorry We Are French. I swear, best name ever. Like, it's so funny. 2 to 4 players. It plays 2 to 4 players in about 40 to 80 minutes, and it's priced at about 65.95 Canadian. I kind of went, ouch, when I saw that, because I received this as a review copy, so I didn't pay that for it. And Suzanne and I were having a quick convo. I'm like, that's a lot. I mean, we'll get to components, but that's a lot for a game. And just the way things are, Suzanne has a bit more insight than I do, but just I know people are gonna see the price and go, oh my goodness. But I think this is kind of the direction where game prices are going. So bear that in mind, and we're gonna talk about component quality as well. So I just realized this is a space game, isn't it?
Yeah, 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 yeah. You're just realizing that now, huh, Mandy?
Can I tell you when I started playing, I just kind of like skipped through the theme. I just saw colors and let's just play the game. And I was like reading the little description. Because I often will
The
look at
fact that
BGG.
your player board is literally different
Planets.
moons, and the cover of the game is literally a
I,
giant planet.
wow. Yep. And yeah, y'all
Get
can
over the little things. Yeah, I get it. I get
y'all
it.
can roast me for that because that's pretty bad. It's like I knew they were planets, but it just
Roaster.
didn't dawn
Do
on me. But
it.
anyway, because there are robots, and robots are not always in space. Oh my
Okay.
god. Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, so hence the some of the names in here are the planets they're talking about in the game. They're talking about ships coming from Ganymede, which hello space. And humanity has decided to launch Project Galileo. So this is what the game is talking about, and you're trying to settle on the four main satellites of Jupiter. So they have Europa, which I know from a video game that I play, Ganymede, and Callisto. So those are some of the planets that we're trying to settle on. Uh, there was a theme in this game I think I might have missed, but we'll talk about that momentarily. So, in the game, you play as some of the corporations involved in the events of Ganymede and settling the four satellites of Jupiter by acquiring robots from Earth and Mars. You're getting experts, developing technologies, and building superstructures. Okay. That's pretty much it. But you're going to have your board, which has planets on it, and they each have their own kind of individual track, and those tracks will give you benefits throughout the game, but some of them also give you end game benefits as well. One of them is great because it allows you to hold more objective cards for end game scoring, so that's when I like to get up there a little early on that track. But things like that, or the one gives you a bit of a resource that's a trickier resource to get by moving up that track. How do you do that? Well, there's another main board that has your, I guess it'd be the specialists on the bottom. There's a row of specialists, and their cards have a red or a blue kind of banner on the top and bottom, and they have things that'll help you out. There's also a little number that gives you influence when you choose these types of cards, because there's an influence track, one red, one blue, and depending on which one you're on, allows you to take the benefit of that color stripe on the card you're choosing. Then we have cards on the top, and those are the robot cards that you can choose from. And those ones are going to allow you to put those on your board beside the corresponding planet because they have the planet colors on them. And they're also going to give you benefits when you place them in your kind of play area. That's just a kind of a general overview what that does. And I believe the game ends in a couple of ways. Ours usually ended when the pile of specialist cards ran out. I know, Suzanne, you've played it. I don't know if that's how yours ended, but that's how ours ended most times in the game. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. But yeah, that's how ours
Yeah.
ended.
Ah, I don't
Sorry,
remember.
I didn't mean to put you on the
The
spot.
pressure.
But it's an engine building game when what it comes down to. So I am surprisingly really good at this game. But anyway, I digress. Maybe it's just because I won more than once. So let's start off by saying I like this game. I was worried. I was like, oh, is this going to be a slog type to get these tracks moving and things are not going to work together? And things work together really well. I was always like, near the end, like, oh gosh, I only have a few more turns. And people would see that you were doing really well and they were like, yeah, let's rush it. So, because you could just get more of those cards, right? So you could end the game. Um, and I really enjoyed where it was going. There were a couple things that I didn't understand, and I don't even know if I still think it's important. You have these robots kind of cards that you start with. So you have these tiles which represent the types of robots, there are four of them. And then you can put those out as kind of personalized robots, I guess you can say. I didn't fully understand the use of those because I feel like it was hard to get them out. You couldn't just take one action and put them out. It took a couple of actions to get them out because you had to get the tile on the card and then the card out to your area and then assign a planet to it. So there were a few steps to get it there. And for me, the payoff on it, I didn't understand it. So this is something, Suzanne, we can definitely please talk to if that's something that you found was good. I did it, but I didn't really.
Well, I think it serves a couple purposes.
Yeah,
One,
still please.
you are beholden to the cards that are in the market, to what you have available in
Sure.
terms of actions, right? And I think that there are times sometimes when the primary, the action you really, really want isn't
Mhm.
there. Well, this provides a secondary outlet for some of those actions, which is a positive thing. So you don't completely waste a turn
Right.
and you feel like there's a little bit of flexibility there. But I think that where it really kicks in is the way that the robots work and the way that the scoring works. It
Right.
compounds, right? And so that's another example of, Mandy, if you and I are fighting over that one type of robot, and every time it comes on the market, you beat me to getting it.
Right.
This is the way I'm guaranteed, right,
Sure.
that I can influence and get the type of robot um, that I need and get it to the planet specifically that I need. Additionally,
Mhm.
that planetary assignment really matters as you're progressing up the track. So I think it's just about flexibility and control. And it's a little bit of an outlet there. Is it maybe the most efficient thing? Probably not. But I
Right.
think that in a game of high efficiency, sometimes having a little bit of an outlet action is a good idea as well. So that's kind of how I personally viewed that. But I don't think you're wrong in terms of finding it in like the inefficient option. I think
Sure.
that's
No,
probably
and
correct.
that's fair, and I didn't really look at it that way. No, that's totally a fair point. And at the end of the day, it's cards that are like kind of just randomly coming out, so it does give you a way to kind of mitigate, like you were saying, if someone else is taking it or the card you want is not coming out, you're able to do that. The inefficiency happens is just it takes a few turns to get it out.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, I didn't even think about it that way, and that totally makes sense. So that for me was like the only thing that I was like, yeah, like I could do with or without it. But like the little things I like you can get all those objectives you want. Yeah, stack those objectives, but you have a limit on how many you can keep based on where you are on a certain planet. And at the end of the game, you have to pay. If you do not pay for the ones that you're scoring, bye, then you don't get the points. And for me, I love that. People are like, well, why? It's just no, I love that. It makes you, it forces people to be like, oh, I have to manage my money, but I also at the same time need to pay attention to these scoring things. You can't just stack them all up and yeah, I'm gonna get all of them and get all the points at the end of the game. Yeah, okay, well make sure that you're able to pay for it because otherwise you're not scoring. And it did happen to some people in our game because they got a little greedy. They were really trying to push the end of the game, and in doing so, we're not able to score all of their objectives. I like stuff like that because now it makes you consider your actions a little bit more. And just because someone has a lot of robots out doesn't mean they're going to win. I had a few out, and then a couple of people I were playing with had several robots. I'm like, wow, I think I'm in trouble here. Guess what? Didn't matter. I just had picked really good objectives that worked really well together with the robots that I did have that ended up winning. So it's one of those like doesn't matter what it looks like. It's how, it's how you're actually playing the game. Wow, that seems like meta in a really weird way, but not. Anyway. I don't know why that sounded weird when I said it. All that to say, Galileo Project, I really liked what it was doing. I didn't understand the whole casino thing because if you're looking at the board and stuff, there's like, it looks like there's chips for money. There are like casino symbols. And I feel like maybe I missed something about that in the story in the book. So I think I might have to go
Oh,
back and read
I
that.
noticed. Obviously, you noticed the poker chips, but I'll be honest, Mandy, I also missed it. I didn't realize there was a casino theme other than the poker chips, but I didn't notice any of that.
Yeah, if you look on the board, they had like casino
Oh
type
wow.
images and stuff. And I remember one of
Right
my
over my
we're
head.
like, dude. And then the other person we were playing with, he's like, yeah, that was totally like in the description. I'm like, how did we like totally miss
Whoops.
that? So I'll have to go back and take a look at it. But it's a game that is on the shelf that it's going to stay there for like, 'cause I enjoyed it. So Galileo Project for me. Hopefully that description did not scare you away from buying or trying this game, but I really enjoyed myself. Suzanne, I know you've played it. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add as well.
No, I really did enjoy this one. I think I was really looking forward to this when they first announced it, and quite frankly, I think Sorry We Are French has put out a lot of games that I've really enjoyed. So
Say the
maybe they're
word,
just a publisher
Suzanne.
that
They've put
clicks.
out some
I'm not
say it.
yeah, you say it.
They put out some bangers. Geez, Suzanne, you just had to say it.
I'm too old to use. Bangarang. No, I think maybe they just select games that I really, really enjoy. So
Yeah,
I'm with you on this one, Galileo Project. I really enjoyed it. The engine building, the choices. I love the managing the initiative track, the way that you pay
yeah,
for things, the control that you feel like you have. Similar to you, Mandy, I love games that let you choose how you score, which
yeah.
interestingly enough, one of our favorite roll and write games, Demeter, which is a
Yes,
very heavy roll and write game, a core mechanism of Demeter and its follow-up game for Runa is you choose, you have to work towards what you get to score, which is
absolutely.
something I love about that game. And here we have it in Galileo Project, which is in the same family of games from the same publisher. Go figure.
Yes.
You have good taste, Mandy, most
Thank
of the
you,
time.
as do you. So there you go, everyone. Galileo Project. Check it out.
All right, to wrap up, I've got one more roll and write for you because that's the way it goes. And this is one I've been working on for a while,
Okay.
and so I'm excited that I finally get to talk about. This is called City Trip Bruges.
Hmm.
There's also a City Trip Antwerp as well, but mechanically they're very similar, but
Oh,
different layouts and that kind of thing. So this is designed and has illustration and graphic design by Christoph van Konkelberg, and it's published by City Trip Games. Basically, an independent designer and publisher who developed this game on their own. And in City Trip Rouge, it is a card-driven roll and write game. So you get these very thin, tall, rectangular cards. They're maybe only like an inch and a half wide, two
oh,
inches wide, and then very long. It's an interesting card structure, and you get a whole bunch of
cool.
them in the box.
Yeah.
And you have the primary mechanism are these action cards that are double-sided, and you're going to have actions related to restaurants, actions related to movement points, actions related to tourists, things like that. Because ultimately, you have a big sheet and it looks like a map of the city. And
Okay.
there's just a gabillion icons on it. So many icons representing things like tourist stops, theaters, restaurants, that kind of thing. It also has a number of different larger buildings that have a more distinct visual icon look to them.
Mhm.
And that is because they are actually real places. And one of the things I'll mention is that there's a whole history pamphlet in City Trip Bruges that discusses all the different places that are highlighted in the game from a historical point of
Oh,
view.
I love
So
that.
it's actually almost educational in that
I
element.
I like that.
Yeah, and one of the things you do at the beginning of the game is you pick what location you're gonna start at. Now you can do it randomly, or in the solo game, there are scenarios that you set up, but there's a deck of cards that represent these different special locations, and each of those cards, you just shuffle them up and pick one. Okay,
Mhm.
that's where we're all gonna start. Cool. But if you look at the card, it's got a photo and it's got a whole like little historical blurb on the location. I
Yeah.
thought that that was a really charming detail in Trip
Nice.
Bruges. So what's going to happen, but the gameplay is the issue, right?
Mhm.
And so you've got this big sheet and you're trying to move around, and you seed the deck based on player count, and that's how many actions. So when the deck is out, then your game is over.
Right.
And what's going to happen is that you've got these cards that have three different actions, and you're going to flip it, so almost like welcome to, because then you've got two cards next to each other,
Mhm.
and you get to pick two of the actions between those. So there's six actions displayed between the two cards, and you get to pick two actions, but they have to be adjacent to each other. But you can
Oh.
pick any of the pair of actions. So you're looking at these, revealed faces going, ooh, well, that gives me three movement points, but only
Mhm.
one dining point. Or if I take those three movement points, the other action below it is a tourist thing, and I'm not going to be able to take advantage of it this turn. But
Right,
here
right.
I only get two movement points, but I get two dining points and I can use them both. So I'll use that pair instead. So that randomness and that action pairing mechanism is unique, and it's interesting and it's fun, and it feels like you have flexibility, and you get to make interesting decisions. So I really like that action selection mechanism that they created in City Trip. And then, yeah, you just choose your actions and you're going to be moving around this board, marking the lines, circling the points that you hit. If you go to a fancy restaurant, it costs two dining points. If you go to a fast food restaurant, it costs one. And as you're achieving things, you've got a little tracker down the side and you're marking things off as you earn them. And those will earn you points. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins. So very standard on that front. But in general, the City Trip Bruges and City Trip Antwerp, I really like what they do. I think that that action selection mechanism is unique and compelling and fun. The maps are a lot, but
Oh.
you do have a lot of connection points, and do get to make interesting decisions. There are scoring cards that get randomized, and they're
Mhm.
kind of seeded by type. So that also changes up the game from game to game
Right.
because, oh, well, maybe a game has shopping as a goal. So now you're really trying to hit all those shopping points. But in a future game, you've got theaters as a goal, and that really does change it up on how those combo together. So that's another element that kind of keeps it fresh as you're playing through. So the twist here is, the city trip games are ones I ordered from a website in France.
Oh.
I'm unaware of any broader publishing plans for City Trip, unfortunately, but it is a polished production, and I ordered it on
There you go.
Philibert.net, which is where I order a lot of my European games, and that's how I got it. If you are into roll and write games the way I am, I think it's worth looking at. It does something different, and I really enjoyed it. So that is City Trip Bruges, or City Trip Antwerp.
Okay. I had not heard of this. It sounds cool though. So now of course I'm gonna have to check it out. Yeah, thanks, Suzanne.
Pace yourself, Mandy. Well, there you have it. Those are some games we have been playing. Folks, we finally have another expert back. So excited that our friend Raf Cordero has joined us to talk all about painting miniatures. And folks, after you listen to this or pause it, go check out some of Raf's work.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Hey there, Salt and Sass. I'm Raf Cordero, or Captain Raffy as I'm known on the internet, And I'm here today to talk to you about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is painting miniatures. I love painting minis. I paint a few times a week, and I paint all kinds of miniatures. I play Warhammer and Marvel Crisis Protocol and all those games where you have to spend hours clipping your minis apart and gluing them together. But I also play a lot of board games, and a lot of board games these days have minis that are fantastic to get painted. There is really something special about sitting down to play a favorite game that you and your group or your partner love, and opening it up and having those minis, with color popping off of the table. Part of what I want to talk about too is it can be very intimidating to start, and it doesn't have to be. There are a lot of really easy ways to get going, very simple, kind of foolproof methods that will make your minis look great without taking a lot of time and without having to worry too much about mistakes. And right off the bat, it's worth pointing out that we all make mistakes. All of us who paint, we always do. There's a saying among us, some of us mini painters, that a painted mini is better than an unpainted mini, no matter what the painted mini looks like. And that's something that I take to heart, kind of as a form of encouragement. It doesn't matter if I make mistakes. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect to look very cool on a table. And so that's what I want to do. I want to encourage folks to give it a try. It's a very fun hobby in and of its own right, and it can really kind of make that one game you love extra special. So what I want to do is I want to talk about a very easy way to get started. And the best way to get started is to first pick the minis you want to paint. And now this might sound counterintuitive to folks who have never painted, but what makes a good candidate for painting is a mini with a lot of detail. And I know that might seem scary. You might think like, oh my gosh, how am I going to paint those eyes, or how am I going to paint that little book, or all those little details in a mini? It's actually easier to paint something that exists than it is to try to make something appear to be there that isn't there. When a miniature has eyes, you can just paint the eyes. But if the face isn't detailed and it's just kind of a blob, then you have to create them first, which is a lot trickier. So, generally speaking, the more detailed a mini, the easier it is to paint. Also, there's a little thing our brain does when we see stuff, in that it fills in a lot of holes for you. You don't actually have to paint the eyes. Your brain will trick you into thinking the eyes are painted a lot of the times. I've seen that happen with someone holding a miniature 4 inches from their face, and they compliment the eyes. And if you just stop for a second, the eyes were never actually painted. That's especially true when you're playing a board game where your minis are a few feet away from you on the table. You don't actually need to go in and do the tiny things, but their existence will make it a little bit easier for you to paint. So don't shy away from games with detailed minis. That's actually what you want. Games like Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, Unmatched, dungeon crawlers, board game minis are great these days. Almost any of the ones on your shelf will be good to start. Um, After that, you're going to want to pick up a starter set. Companies like Citadel or Army Painter make great starter sets. Reaper is another painting company that I like to recommend. They have starter sets that actually come with a mini, and all of the paints you need and instructions to paint that specific mini. That can be a very fun way to get started. But any sort of starter set that gets you a few different colors you think you'll want, a couple paint brushes will be good to go. I do recommend using miniature specific paints, only because it's easier to get started, to kind of use those paints that are designed for small detail work. You will need to prime your minis. This is maybe honestly probably the trickiest part of this whole process. If it's an unpainted mini, I mentioned Unmatched by Restoration Games. Their minis actually come pre-painted with kind of some detail washes. You don't need to reprime those. You can paint right over those, no problem. But something like Gloomhaven, where the minis are just bare plastic, they will need primer for it to work. Again, where Citadel makes primer, Army Painter makes primer. All the companies that sell miniature paint, they also sell primer. And you're going to want to use one of their specialized primers, just because it's a little bit easier to control the flow on those so you don't kind of over prime. So yeah, grab a can of spray paint, give them a few light coats. You don't need 100% make the whole mini black coverage. You can just little 3 quick bursts, get enough on there that it's mostly covered, and you're good to go. And so then the specific method I want to talk about today that is the easiest is uses something that's called a dip or a wash. And what you're going to do is you're going to paint your miniature the color you want everything to be. If you want your mini to have a blue shirt, you paint the shirt blue. You paint their skin whatever color you want, their hair whatever color you want. But you want to go one step brighter than you think. So if you want a nice, kind of dark blue, maybe start with a more royal or navy blue color, because the dip and the wash is going to bring that down a little bit. For actually painting your mini, what you want to do is you want to start inside out. So I'm imagining like a halfling rogue miniature for D&D, and he's wearing like a shirt with a vest over it and a jacket. You're going to want to paint that shirt first, then the vest, then the jacket. You're working from inside the mini out, and that's just because you don't want to get your black vest paint on your blue shirt, and it's a little bit easier to work inside out than it is to work outside in. You can do anything, but that's a little tip that I have found that makes it a lot easier. So you're going to go in with your paints. You're going to want to thin them with a little bit of water. It's always better to do 2 thin coats than it is to do 1 thick one. You get better control that way. That's another just sort of general mini painting tip. This doesn't take too long. This process is probably going to take under an hour for your first mini. Just kind of go slow and get that base color down, what we call a base color. And then here's where the magic happens. Army Painter makes a product called a dip. Citadel, Reaper, all of the other companies make something called a wash. And these are very fluid paints that are going to, by themselves, give you the shadow that you want and give you the dimension on your mini. The Army Painter dip is literally a dip. You take your miniature, you dunk it in this pot of dark goo, shake it off, you let it dry, magic. The washes you have to apply with a brush, but there's no thinning needed. They come right out of the pot. You just stick your brush in there, dabble it all over. You don't have to be details. You basically want to wash or dip the entire mini in this color, and then you sand it upright. And what it does is this special wash paint flows into all of the recesses, creates the shadow and the contrast you need, and you are done. That takes about an hour. Like I said, it's not going to win any competitions, but we don't need it to. We're just bringing our table to life a little bit with a little bit of paint and a little bit of fun. So that's it. That's all it takes to get started. There's plenty of YouTube videos you can find. You can find me on Twitter at Captain Raffi. I am always happy to answer specific questions or point people in the direction of a video or a tutorial. And you can find a lot of my work on Goonhammer.com, where we have an entire column recurring series called How to Paint Everything that is dedicated to helping folks get started painting. So yeah, I hope you give it a shot. If you do, let me know. Let me know what you think. And maybe I'll come back some other time with more advanced tips. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Raf. Really appreciate you chiming in with all of your knowledge and kind of encouraging us to get painting minis. I'll be honest, the last time I tried to paint a mini was on my original Robo Rally, like in 1995. And it was not pretty. So,
No, is it really? Actually, it's been a long time for me. So I used to do a lot of painting ceramics and also minis, but many moons ago. I still have my airbrush kit. I used to use it more for makeup than airbrushing for miniatures. I used to paint. I used to do all that stuff, and then I just stopped doing it. I don't know. I don't know why. I just maybe just got really busy. But hey, big respect out there to people who do that and the detail and just amazing.
all right, Mandi, it's that time. It's pie time.
I'm scared. All right, game pie. This one, you can tell when Suzanne, I know I say this every time because it's very like, this is what it is, versus mine, it's like, so I went down a grassy knoll and had a thought today and it said, hey, this is game pie.
Games that you think about when you're wandering and find yourself sitting under a knoll.
Exactly,
Yeah,
not
got
even
it.
Frolicking. Exactly,
Yeah.
not even
Oh my
frolicking.
goodness. Oh,
But yes.
next level.
So Sam picked a good one. And I have to say, I didn't think I played a lot of area control type games, which is what our game pie is going to be about today. Area control games. I didn't think I played a lot. And looking at the list, I've actually played and enjoyed many. What about you, Suzanne? Was it a surprise to you when you looked at the listing of games and you're like, actually, there's a lot here?
Yeah, because I typically, right, because area control is often implies a pretty aggressive,
Right.
high player interaction gameplay experience, which can be a little dicey for me. I'm a cube pusher. Maybe we both are, right? We love
Sure.
our big, heavier. In spite of how much I talk about roll and write games, the reality is my favorite games
Yeah.
are heavy cube pushing euros. So, but when you start to look at games that really do have a core around area majority, area control,
Yeah,
there's some great ones.
absolutely. So I'm going to start with one that talks about being great, although great and then died. But the king is dead. great and then dead. I'm sorry. But the king is dead. I've actually owned this game twice. So I had it, and then I was clearing out games. I'm like, oh, I really like this game, but I just have so many games. So I ended up getting rid of it, and then I ended up coming upon it again in the new version of it. And this is Osprey Games, and I was like, yeah, no, I got to keep it. It's so good, and it is literally one of those games where, please, no one get on me about my history here because it's gonna be rough. We'll just keep it top level here, but you've got different areas of the board. This is where we're talking geography, a certain part of the world, yeah, parts of Europe and so forth. But you have cubes there that represent kind of different people invading those areas and who's going to be the winner of those areas. And it definitely, there's a lot of back and forth because you have a set of cards that everybody has the same set of cards that you're using, right? And playing those cards will put cubes there, but in a certain way depending on the type of card that you play. So if you play a card too early and maybe you need a certain color there because you're like, nah, I really need this one to win, well, then you might be out of luck. So it's simple in the fact you have like 7 or 8 cards to play with, and you have a very small kind of area that you're working with like 3 or 4 different colored cubes. There's a lot of gameplay there, and I am here for it. So The King is Dead is one that I thoroughly still enjoy.
Nice. First up for me, classic game. And honestly, I wouldn't have immediately thought of it if I hadn't looked at it as I was scrolling through
Okay.
Board Game Geek. Manhattan.
Oh,
Manhattan has been around for years and years and years, and they did come up with a reprint a few years ago in which you're playing cards to place out building units onto the board in your color, and you build vertically, right? So they start to stack on each other. So ultimately, you end up with a really fun game with
yeah.
a lot of table presence. Manhattan is simple, it's quick, it is area control, it is area majority, and it's very pure in that front, right? It's not a lot of other stuff going around it. It's like, this is what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
trying to take over these buildings. And it's just fun. Manhattan's solid example if you don't play a lot of area majority or area control games. This would be a great starter one just to kind of explore what that could look like. So Manhattan.
Yeah, this isn't one I've played, but I definitely know I've heard you talk about it before. So, okay, interesting. Next on my list is one that I like because it brings back a very happy and hilarious memory, and that is Root. And this is from Leader Games.
Yeah.
We played a game online. I think it was you, me, and Ashley. And I'll never forget Ashley. I'm like, I think I won. And Ashley's like, did you? And she had to go and check. And she's like, oh my gosh, you did. I was like, yes. I'm surprisingly not terrible at Root, but it is one of those games where, depending on the characters that you're playing, you want to have more of your people in areas of the board and kind of booting people out, right? To have that majority. Like it's standard in a lot of these types of games. I'm usually the cat or the vagabond, and that seems to work well. But all of these characters have abilities that, will help you gain that majority in certain areas of the board. So Root has that. There's a character set I'm looking like woodland creature esque type roles. Woodland creature, would that be? Do you know what I mean? Like their
Are you talking about
characters?
the faction?
Yes, the factions, or like that's kind of
Oh, the
like,
actual faction name.
yeah. So like,
Oh, I was so confused. I'm like, I have like they're all woodland
sorry,
creatures.
I
I mean,
mean
I
it
guess the
falls
sea
into that
otters.
kind of that illustration of like woodland character looking like that type of factions. You know what I mean? So you've got like your cats and you've got your
Got it. Okay. Okay.
crows
Yeah.
and you've got
Whew.
your, well, vagabond doesn't really fit there, but you get the idea of where
The
I'm going. And
eerie,
it's,
right? The birds with the
yes,
eerie.
the
Yep. Yep. Yep.
forested areas and where they reside and that sort of thing. I'm getting off on a tangent here. Long story short, Root is very good. I enjoy it. You should try it.
Excellent choice. Root
Okay.
is phenomenal. I mean, there's a reason it's been expanded and it grows and it's a top seller for a reason.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
So good.
Next up for me, Deus or Deuce. I think it's Deus.
Deuces.
Deus. Which I don't know. I feel like not a lot of people talk about Deus. Deus is kind of I actually just talked about it on a recent podcast because it
Mhm.
Deus the original printing did that big no of resources that are green and also having a player
Yeah.
color be green. No,
Ruh-roh.
no, no, Deus. But in spite of that flaw, I still fell in love with the game when it was first published. I loved it so much. I bought the second edition when it came
No.
out so I could get the new bits. Deus is a card game. So you have these tiles that you put together that create different areas, but then all the gameplay is driven in your cards that have different types, and you're building up a tableau. It's a complete engine building game, but a lot of the core is you getting to these different zones on the board and building up your faction there. And it really holds up it's a great game. It's probably a top 100 game for me. I wish more people played Deus, but
Wow.
for area majority, area control, Deus, you should really check it out.
This is a good game. Actually, one of my friends ran like on a whim, taught it to me. I had not, this was like a
Yep,
long time ago, and I was like,
yep.
oh, okay, that's cool. Let's try it. And I was like, oh, this is pleasant
Yeah,
surprise. I
it's
like this.
really good.
Yeah, it was quite good. So, yeah, good pick on Deus there.
Thank you.
Next on my list is Path of Light and Shadow, and I actually think I did a stream with a friend Michael from. If anybody has watched the channel previous, would know who that is. Did a lot of playthroughs together, and this was one that we both really enjoyed. I liked the art, the game itself, quite good, and this one was published by Indie Boards and Cards. They might be under few different publishers now, but that's who it was at the time. And I apologize, it's been a hot minute since I played it. I just remember really liking it, but it's what they call an empire building experience. But the area control is there, but there's also deck management and a little bit of like that civilization type because you're trying to build in certain areas of the board, and obviously you're going to need majorities to keep those buildings there or keep your people there. Otherwise, a person can come in and take you out. But I liked the deck building aspect of it because the cards obviously are really important in making sure that you were able to survive and have your technologies and all of those things in those areas. So for me, Path of Light and Shadow, if you haven't played it, and I feel like it just wasn't really talked about enough or a lot.
It's a tough market. It's a tough market for games, I'll tell
It
you.
it is, and it looks like one that people would be like, "Oh," or like, "It doesn't look like my type of game. I don't play Civ games," because it does almost come across as a little bit as a Civ game when you first see it. It's really good. So I encourage you to try Path of Light and Shadow. I really, really liked it.
I have not played it, so I'm one of those people. Next slice up for area control pie. I debated this one, but ultimately, obviously, I decided it was okay. La Granja. La
Okay.
Granja is one of like La Granja's a top 20 game for me. I
Yeah, it's a good game.
love this game. The reason why I debated about it is La Granja is it's like what category of game does this fit? I mean,
Mm,
it's got so many different mechanisms packed in there. In fact, in the rule book, they even acknowledge that to some degree. But you get a player board and it's got multi-use cards and you're collecting resources. And then you've got the central board with different areas that you're managing and they're donkeys. And oh my goodness, there's so much going on in this game, and it's such a fabulous Euro style game. Oh, I want to play it right now. And I know there's like a deluxe edition that they just
yeah,
kickstarted or
so
backer
nice.
kitted or whatever. Um, but at the core of Le Grand is this shared central board where you are putting out units and trying to gain control of an area and develop little areas that you can get bonuses from and benefit from. So Le Grand has to go on here. Not necessarily the most confrontational for area control, area
Sure.
majority building up, but it is a critical enough part of the game that I felt like I could sneak Le Grand into this list.
I will allow it because it is quite a good
Thank you,
game.
madame.
Like I'm the end all be all, but here we go.
Mademoiselle.
Well, the last slice of pie for me is a war chest, and I know this has come up on another list that I had. I don't remember what game pie it was, but war chest, and I think that's an AEG game if I'm not mistaken. I apologize in advance if that's
Yeah, I believe
incorrect.
so.
I
Yeah,
believe
I'll
so.
direct. Yeah.
Yep. And this is a game where it's like you're competing with somebody else. You can play it in teams, but I've always liked playing it just with one other person. And you have these kind of like not tokens, but chips, and they have different things on it that you can do, or different types of characters that can, once they're on the board, can attack in a certain style of way. And the goal of the game is to try to capture these kind of points, the majority of the points on the board before the game ends. I am not particularly great at this game, but I really enjoy it, and I really like the fact because you know they're in a bag and you pull them out, and then when you're ready to play it, plan your turn. These are the tokens that you're working with. You can gain more as the game progresses, but this is what you're working with for right now. Every time you have a turn, you pull from your bag and you deploy or move them that are on the board, and it gets real tricky because it's a really I like the fact of having lots of them out, but then if you're playing with someone who's really good, they can just take you out real fast. With their like, I say sniper, but you know what I mean. Someone that has that, distance, and they're just really good at this type of game. I like the variety of I don't want to say players, variety of the word.
Factions, units,
Yeah,
whatever.
thank you. Units.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. My apologies.
Mhm.
My brain's just like not clicking. But I like the variety of units that you can use. This one goes away. Great. That's okay. I've got more. And I mean, you are limited, so you do have to have some sort of strategy. But having more out on the board is not necessarily always the best way to win. But I like that. So War Chest, really great. And I think I have all the expansions because I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a great game. I love it too. All right, the last slice of area control pie. anybody who knows me knows that this was going to be on my list because this is like a top 10 game for me,
Yeah.
Kemet.
Not
And
played this game. Not
well,
played it.
I don't I would suggest maybe it's not your type of game,
Mm,
but
fair.
I don't know because this one is real good.
Okay.
Kemet is because what Kemet does, right? It is a troops on a map game. You got a map, you got your faction, you're sending troops up, and you're trying to just take over zones, right?
Okay.
And you're scoring temporary points and full points, and you got your own personal little action board that you're managing the actions that you have available, and you have cards for combat, and you're duking it out, and you get to ride on beetles and elephants and all this other stuff. It's great. Um, but I think one element of Kemet that works sometimes when you get into the troops on the map kind of game,
Yeah.
uh, m- sometimes defensive players, their instinct to kind of turtle up happens. Kemet is a
Mm,
game that you cannot do that. Like
got
it
it.
is a pure aggression game. And I feel like that puts people on more of an even playing field because
Okay.
there's just no reason for you to turtle. And so
Mm.
the aggression, the fighting, the hostility, it's part of the fun.
Hostility.
And
It's
you know, you
fun.
have to go out there. It's nothing personal. You gotta beat each other up, and it just works. It's a brilliant game, Kemet. I'll put it on every list I can sneak it into because Kemet is fabulous. And Mandy, I know you're talking about visiting me again. Kemet's definitely worth. We'll try to work it to the
I
table because
think I'm gonna have
I
to.
want to see how you play.
Yes, I'm gonna have to try because it's one that you mentioned quite a bit, and who knows, maybe I will love it, even though it's not. It doesn't sound like my type of game, but you never know.
You never know. Well, there you have it, folks. Some majority area control games in our game pie today. Feel free to let us know your thoughts on this game pie. You can always email us at saltandsassgames@gmail.com or chime in on the BGG Guild number 4131, Salt and Sass. We always have a thread for an episode, and you're welcome to comment there. What area control game did we completely miss? Or do you
Yeah,
love area control games, or are they kind of not usually your bag? Because I do feel like games with a lot of player interaction, they're just more divisive. And
sure.
whereas you could also say games that are multiplayer solitaire can also be very divisive. Some people like that, and
That's a
some
good point.
people don't.
Yeah.
So chime on in the guild if you'd like to. Or Mandy, I suppose there's some social media where they can find us as well.
Oh yes, all the socials. Well, if you're watching here on the YouTube, or perhaps maybe you just want to check out some gameplay from us on the Twitch, you can find us at Salt and Sass Games. So Salt and Sass Games. So that's YouTube and Twitch. You can also find us on the Twitter, but it's spelled a little differently there. Salt N Sass Games. So that's Salt, the letter N, Sass Games. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at 613Mandi, and that's Mandi with an I. And what about you, Suzanne?
And you can find me on every social media platform as 425 Suzanne. Feel free to say hi.
All right, there you go.
As always, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Salt and Sass podcast. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be part of your extended gaming family. And we just have so much fun being here. And it was great to hear all of you chiming in about your shelf of opportunities.
Yeah,
Mandy, I want to see some more official progress on your list
let's get
soon,
there.
young
They just
lady. All
keep
right.
coming. Yeah. Sorry.
I believe in you. You can do it. Until next episode, everyone, stay hydrated and play some games, and we'll talk to you then. Bye.
All right, bye, everybody. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode was sponsored by Druid City Games, where player experience comes first. Check out all of their great games at druidcitygames.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, please check us out on coffee.com/Salt and Sass Games. Thank you for your support. We are also a part of the Goonhammer Media Network. Check out more of their content on media.goonhammer.com. Salt and Sass is produced with love by Suzanne and Mandi, and we'll be back next episode with more salt, more sass, and more games.